Hello, welcome back. Um, we're going to continue on from yesterday with our Mega-lo-Mania um, rework in Unreal Engine. Now, yesterday we started trying to sort out the minimap that is displayed in the top left-hand corner of our screen, and there was a choice between doing it as an actor or doing it as a UI widget. I think that's what they call them, yeah. So we kind of put together an actor that was able to display some of the pieces. That was fairly straightforward. And we put together a widget that also displayed some of the minimap pieces. Now, the problem with the minimap in the widget here is that it was difficult to get the size right. There does seem to be some inconsistency with some of the images that I'm using. I think some of the images have been taken from images provided directly within the game, and others are probably just extracted from different versions. So far as I can tell, the resolution is different, but that shouldn't stop us trying to get this to work. So the next issue with the widget was just the placement, the alignment, organization of it. We had the minimap widget that we were trying to place inside our right panel, and as you can see, we've kind of populated some text, put our minimap in there, and while that displays, our particular component that should fit to that size just won't be taller, doesn't have the height. And when we actually view that in game, we get the minimap and the text in the top right left hand corner of the screen, and as you can see, the minimap is tiny. So because of the different scale, even if we made the minimap, let's just get rid of this one for a moment, even if we made the minimap widget scale to 2, which we know messes everything up, or can mess everything up, seemed to work okay there. Sometimes it moved all the things around, but it's kept that quite well. But even if we set this size to 2, it's still fairly small in comparison to how our sector is shown, and we can view this in a separate window that I've defined as 640 by 400. So that's kind of more the resolution we're expecting this game to be displayed in, and we can compare that with our DOSBox version. So as you can see, it's pretty much the same size. So really, we're going to try and get our version to look the same as the DOSBox version in terms of size and ratios and stuff. We'll obviously have to reposition the sector view, but we can still see that the minimap is significantly smaller in our version, and that was even with a scale of 2. So we can try and increase the scale some more. Maybe we'll just go for 4. See if that makes any difference. So we have to do this new editor window to make it pop open into a separate screen. Okay, so that it's not actually a bad size. If we take our DOSBox window, it does look like the size of the minimap is approximately the same size as our DOSBox version. But we still have alignment issues, placement issues. It still doesn't fit right based on the text. Now, I know that that's we can overcome that, but the UI stuff is fairly new to me. It doesn't seem to do as I'd expect based on my experience with other UI systems of the same type. There doesn't seem to be any way to tell this component, this is where we're putting our minimap in our minimap canvas panel, to be higher. Now maybe that's because we've added the scale to the wrong place, but if we scale this one we can see that almost that does the same thing. Everything kind of jumps out. So maybe we'll have to do the scale at the very top. So this is our canvas panel for our right panel element, and we'll scale that by 4 instead. Now obviously that's made it really huge, and it's really messed up our text. It still doesn't really make the boxes any bigger. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's making any sense. So we start off with a vertical box. The vertical box contains the 3 sections. This section at the top here, the island details there, and the canvas panel down the bottom, which is meant to become the main menu type controls for the game. And if we set this one to fill, it does correctly fill downwards, but it doesn't actually increase the size of any of the others. So yeah, so I find it quite awkward. It doesn't seem to be doing what I expect, and I'm not really sure how to make it work. But whether we have it as a widget or as an actor, which was our alternative solution, it's always going to have the same core logic. It's just whether it's going to show individual images within a widget. So in this case, the components, if we go wrong one, if we go into our minimap widget, we have images in this case, whereas if we go into our minimap actor, we actually had paper sprite components. So I think to try and move forward with this, I'm going to focus on trying to get the actor version of the minimap working. We don't have quite as well, actually we can snap to a grid like we did before. Normally we wanted to snap to 4. I think that's what we used before, but so we can create the appropriate map pieces here, and we know that we can figure out what the locations are for each of the bits as we move forward. And then we need to work on the interaction for that minimap. So our main route doesn't have any clicks, but our paper sprites do, which is quite good. They're the ones the user is going to click on. So we could add. I'll put it in here. Yeah. So we can say we click on a particular part. So we know again. One thing that we did in the widget was we basically just put down 16 pieces, because we know we're going to have 16 pieces, and we know how they're all going to be aligned. So we can, oops, messing that one up. There we go. So that's 14, 15, 16. So we had before we used the dark green grass like map, because that one has all of its pieces to make a full square. We'll just jump back over to our widget. You can see here that it's sprite 44, so it's sprite 43 to 51. 44. Oh no, 43 is our start one. And it doesn't matter which order we do them in, so we'll just go through them all. Put them in approximately the right place. And that's 45. 46. 47. So we have a couple of 47s. Oops. Miss the controls, go all over the place. That's 48. Again, we have a couple of those because we have 2 going down. So we do them twice. Let's put it onto the front lit. Should help a little bit. No, we're not in a 3D world of it. And then we can just align these up. So we've got our full, complete mini-map. '50s. And 51. And that's 46. So the plan is that when now we've got all of our pieces, we know that's the maximum size. So unless we want to really kind of break the mold of the game, we're only going to have maximum size of 4x4 maps. So we can put all our pieces down. And now we'll just name all of our sprites down here to give them referenceable names, and we'll just use effectively their coordinates because that helps us know which ones we want to change. So this one would be 0, 0. That one is 0, 1. 0, 2. And then once we've got all these in place, we can rearrange the list there just to make sure that they're easy referenced. So far this is very similar to what we did with the widget, the UI widget, but somehow missed 1 out there. I jumped straight from 0 to 2 to 3 to 4, but that's annoying. So yeah, the numbers aren't quite right, but they'll work for now. It just saves us changing them all around. Let's try and get them in the right order. Oops, didn't want to do that either. So I can move them to the bottom easily enough, but I can't really move them. Means I'm going to have to figure out how to reverse. So we do 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that, aside from our naming issue, puts everything in the right order. So now we should be able to easily be able to reference individual things if we wanted to change them. So just center them on our little ball. Drop that in there. So again, we'll need to set that to see what that looks like, see if we've got them in the right place. Yep, that'll do. Okay, so we've still got the widget showing, so we'll just take that out for the time being. Again. Okay, so we're still quite far away from our view. The camera could be closer so that we get a better view, but the preview doesn't seem to work quite so well. Although maybe it's just because of the width. As I say, I think you can set the view, the level at play, to certain sizes. So I set, if we play in a new window, we set 600 by 400. 640, sorry, by 400. So if I set the auth width to 640, that may be more similar to, yes, it's a bit more respective of what we see. Pin that down, and then see if we can bring things a bit closer. Yeah, closer doesn't affect our camera because our camera is set to this orthographic camera, so yeah, so we'll have to figure out how to actually make things display the right size some of the time. For now we'll just get them approximately the right place. Have them as 004. These have in the same place. So the screen is a lot smaller than we intend it to be. We need to somehow make those items appear bigger within our actual gameplay view. The camera here does look like it's about the same, just a bit smaller. Plenty of space. So we can try and work on getting that camera to show things better. That would be good. Field, no. No, I don't really see anything obvious in there apart from these ones that actually, the width seemed to help, even though pulling it down, yeah, so we're just clipping it off there. I don't really understand how the width really reflects what we see, but regardless of understanding it, we can at least get it so it's about right. So the island position is all right, not perfect but close enough, and our minimap position is about right too. But obviously we can clean them up over time. Now realistically we want the game to show the right minimap for the right level, and then the sector view show based on what you've selected. So we don't have the sprite for the selection, so we'll just grab that. That's in our icon sprite somewhere. Should get the little square, that's the one. So we'll just grab this square, or control, draw around the box. Kind of jumped me out to the main screen, but we did get what we wanted from it, so it's this one here. And we can go into our mini map, not that one. And we can drop that one in here. So maybe we can set want to make them all stationary anyway. So none of these are going to actually move. Just needs to move over one. And we'll bring it forward by one just so that makes sure that it draws on top of everything. It's not quite, is it? It's actually drawing underneath the one that it's over. But this hasn't actually been positioned anywhere specific, so we'll call this the select mark, I think. So we can position the select mark over the top of whichever particular piece we've selected. There's a shadow on the bottom. I think we may have lost a little bit of the shadow. Let's check that we got the... Yes, we did. Lost a little bit of the shadow. Thought it looked a bit weird. We need 372. Not on that one. Don't know what we just changed. Put that back. There we go. 17. Save that. Yeah, that's better. Gives us that bottom shadow. So now when we place it over a piece, the shadow should look about right. Good. Works. And we'll just run it again. See how that looks, yeah? So that looks about right. We've got the selector, but we've got no logic in there to put the selector in the right place, nor even pick the right map. So yeah, we're just going to jump in and define what the island is going to be. Now we'll put it as a data table again, under miscellaneous, I think. Nope. Blueprints. So first have to define the structure for it. I haven't really given any thought to how we're going to define our islands. So we know the name is going to be that kind of column that we can't see within our data table, so we don't need a property for name. We know that perhaps they're going to start at a particular epoch, so particular tech level. We haven't defined those tech levels, so we just have it as a string for now. And we need multiple, well, either we need 16 spaces to say whether a particular island piece exists or not, and then what island piece it is. That would certainly work for now. It would be neater if the rendering of the minimap knew what piece to show at what place depending on what other pieces join up to it. That way we wouldn't have to define individual images for the individual parts. We'd simply say this one is a land and this one is not. So one thing that we do know that we need is which, I think they call them biome would probably work. Whether it's a snow one, whether it's a foresty one, whether it's the mud one. Again, we know that we don't really know what that's going to be yet in terms of actual variable type. So let's just have the map defined as an array of Boolean values. 16 of them. Okay, so now we need to create our data table. So I can't remember where it is. Not in there. There we go. And we create it from our island structure. And we just call this islands. So our first island is going to be the first one we have here, Allura, that we've seen before. Create a new row. HA. And its epoch, as I say, we're just having this as a string, so it's 9500 BC. The biome, we'll just call this the mud one. And the array of elements, which is our, I think I did one too many there, didn't I? Jump back over here. Yeah, 16 array elements. And yet over here we have 17 array elements. Can we remove one? Perhaps they just are independent. This is just the default one, so we don't need any defined in here. Although maybe it would make it easier to not have to define 15 every time, but nonetheless. So in this particular case, for this particular island, we have two spacers above and below each other, about the right hand side in the middle vertically, which would end up being, if we load up our minimap here, it would end up being this one and this one. So if we start with this one being 0, that would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7, 8, 9, 10. And save that. So we're not telling the game which image to use for that particular island piece, and we're not telling it that those two join up other than simply then they're there on the list. I think that's how I'd like it to work in terms of actually just being dynamic. Defining a map then would be just a matter of defining that 16 by 6 or effectively 4 by 4 and our 16 elements, but equally it's also going to be the more difficult one to implement. It would need to know that 6 and 10 are next to each other, and I'm sure that can be done within the blueprints, and I could code it in normal code better than I can do it in the blueprints. I'm not sure how neat and tidy it would look in the blueprints, but what we can do is instead simply change this from a boolean to a paper sprite, I believe, and then jump back over here, find position 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as we had before, and set that accordingly. Don't know what one it actually is. Find our sprites again. 14, nope, not 14, 15 and 16. So 6 will be 15. And 10. Yep, 10. then within the minimap we will have a variable to define the island. We'll call it the island because that's the kind of terminology we're wanting to go for. And that's actually going to be a name, and that name is actually going to come from and be related to the data table that we've created. So we'll get the island name. Now obviously the island name would be set somehow. Probably by making it public and be set externally. So we want to get the data table name, not the names. Get data table row. We get this one from our island. When we found it, we want to iterate over all of the values that we have from it. So our out row is going to be the table row, and we can cast that to, what did we call it? Our island. Island details class, that's not what we wanted. I guess it's only a structure, so we can't make it. Yeah, so we can split it. I guess that will work for now. So we've got this map data, which we want to loop over. Now, for every item in there, we know we've got for every index we've got in there, we've got a sprite, and we just need to put the sprite onto our component in here. Now our components in here have variable names which represent whether they're kind of XY positions. So we're going to have to translate our index value to those XY positions. So the index value is going to be 0, which will be 0 anyway, so that's very easy, all the way up to 16. Now we should not divided by a vector, divided by an integer. So I think divided by 4. Can we get a sprite by name? Get a tile. Yeah, there doesn't seem to be any easy way to simply select the component we want based on their names. child component 0, 0. Maybe just context and just get. Some of them might work. We'll see what we can get from get child component. Get children components. That should give us a list of all of them. Component name. Change its name. That's no good. Get component by class. By tag. So we need to know the name, the variable name that we've called them, to actually be able to get it and then change its image. We could give the component a tag, but that's just a variable, isn't it? It's just a single string. Paperswipe component. Now can we get its name? See if that makes. Could have been either one of those, but it also says not to use it in the way that we're trying to, so perhaps this isn't the right way to go about it. We set the island default value to our data table gone. That. Okay, so the strings that showed up on screen actually were the right ones. Not ideal, as I say, because it says not to use them, but they're going to work for now, so we're just going to go with it anyway. So what we'll do here is we'll convert to a string. And then we'll append. So we're taking the array index, which is going to be 0 all the way up to 16, or 0 to 15 actually. We're going to divide it. I think that's the first one. Switch these around, makes more sense. There we go. We're going to divide it by 4. And then we're going to find the, no, actually they work better the other way around, the way I explain it. So we get the modulus of 4 of that particular, or modulo. We get the modulus value, and effectively that gives us, if you were to divide the number by 4, how many do you have once you've successfully done that? What's the remaining value? So if we say we're looking at index 0, the remaining value would be 0. The division by 4 would be 0 because we're returning an int, and therefore we have 2 zeros which we concatenate into a string, and we'll print it. So again, this, much like it did before, briefly should show us all the string values all the way up when we play the game. There you go. Not necessarily in perfect order, but it will do. Now we know that we've incorrectly named these things, and unfortunately I'm going to have to go through and name them correctly so we can reference them. But it shouldn't actually take too much time, except if it keeps doing that on me. So I was trying to use the cursor keys to move between them, but when I use the cursor keys it puts me back up to the top, so I have to do it by hand. 13, 20. There we go. Quick and simple. So now we know that this bit gives us a string version that will look like what this bit gives us. So what we'll do is we iterate through all of the elements within our island, and for each one of those we very inefficiently iterate through every one of our children items. We'll have to investigate a better way of doing this. But this will work for now. Of course, if those two strings are equal, we want to branch. So what we can do actually is this one here, we're doing a for each loop. That will go from the beginning to the end every time, but we know once we've actually found a match, we don't want to continue that. So we'll just switch it for each with a break. That way we can get out of it sooner than having to iterate through all of the times. It will improve its efficiency by a small amount, but might as well try and do it with a little bit of elegance rather than just completely unthought through. Okay, so that gives us our Boolean value. Now if that's true, we need to set the sprite for this component, this paper sprite component that we have, and we need to set it to the value of this element within our data table. So we're going to cast that to a paper sprite too, I think. I can't remember what our data table had, whether it was paper sprite components or just paper sprites. Yes, it's just a paper sprite. So we want to cast it to a paper sprite. Yeah, we know we're going to do that every time, so we might as well do that straight away. And if it's true for our paper sprite, set sprite variable sprite source sprite. Can we set the source sprite? Get source sprite. See if that works. No. So we've taken a sprite from here, from the components list. Just now trying to find out how to actually set the actual image of it, really. So many choices. Paper sprite component. Okay. And okay, that tied up at least. I must use the wrong one in that case. It's the same name but referencing a different type of target. So if the two strings are equal, we set the sprite. If we set the sprite, we go all the way back over here and break out of our loop. That's not particularly elegant. We can add a little pin. Go up, it makes it look more like a loop. So we'll do that loop until we've set the sprite. Once we've done that, we break out the loop. Once we break out of this loop, we'll drop back out down into this loop and keep going around them. Let's see how that works, or not, as the case may be. Okay, so that wasn't half bad. The two sprites are there. They're not quite where we expected them to be, but they're there. I must have miscounted. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It should have been the right one, but maybe I'll put it. So we'll need to check our data table in our map. I think our data table is actually in the bottom. We are setting the 6th and the 10th item. If we go back to our viewport, it's the 21st. We could name these actually just the indexes to represent that, which may be a bit cleaner, but it'd be interesting to know quite why that didn't work or didn't do the right thing. So the next thing, we'll have to clean up the fact that the wrong one's actually been displayed, but another thing that we know that we need to do is, if we don't find the name, as in the item shouldn't be shown, we want to hide it. But we can do that what's that? Ah, didn't need to cast it. Just tie that back up again so we don't have to do the casting for no reason. This item, this paper sprite object reference, is going to be set as the new sprite on that target, but is there a way to know, is it none? Oops. Texture. So trying to figure out if we can determine which ones, so if we go back to our data table, some of these are none, then they don't actually have a sprite. It would be good if we could figure that out based on what we've got here. So we know the array element is a paper sprite object reference. So from a paper sprite, how can we determine whether that's actually, well, whether it's set or not, really? Current asset. Nothing really stands out to say this is what you should do. Guess we could see if we can compare it to an empty sprite. Get source sprite. Yeah, I don't know really. There doesn't seem to be doesn't appear to be an easy way to determine whether there's a sprite actually set, unless we can compare to none. No. I'll have to do some investigation, see if there's a way to do that, because we want to really hide the ones that aren't anything. But what we can do instead is select all of our items, select our sprite and clear, compile that, and then when we play we should only see the two that we've actually placed down. Now, they're still in the wrong place, but at least nothing else is shown. We still have our select item as well, but the select mask is going to go somewhere. It's always displayed because you always have to have a sector selected. But we'll deal with that in a moment. What we need to do is try and find out now where the error was. What's causing it to show this piece instead of that piece there? It should be to the right of the mask rather than below it. Obviously, with all the text is set to nothing, we can't actually see which one's which anymore. So we'll just run through it again. So it's actually positioning it on 2, 1. So if we go back over here, the value is 6. So the 6 should divide by 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Maybe the index is wrong. So the array value of 6, which is the one that we're interested in, the one that's going wrong, should divide by 4 once and therefore give us 1. So what we can do simulate work. How's that going to show us anything? Let's not do that. We will add a breakpoint here. Play it again, and we can just step over it So we're looking at array index should be 0 with body. Doesn't say what our current value of the index is, but at least the other ones seem to show their current value. So we clearly want to break here because we just want to know where it goes wrong. So now we're setting the tile. We should be setting the tile for 0, 0. Okay, we are setting the tile for 0, 0. I guess we can't actually set the spike to nothing because that's what we're at least trying to do. Yeah, because we don't know whether it's empty or not, do we? We haven't managed to figure out whether it's an empty item or not, so we are setting the spike to a 0. But okay, so it means we're going to go through them all anyway. Oh, okay. Press the wrong button. Try again. Step over. Now we're on 1, 0. So we're actually interested in, again it was 2, 1. So we'll just step over until the string equals 2, 1. 2, 0. Okay, maybe we're tying these two up wrong. That's probably what it is. They need to be that way round. The division actually works out at being the as being the row, because that's what the first number indicates. It's row column instead of column row. Stop that. Move the breakpoint. Go again. That's better. Yeah. So we were tying them up incorrectly. It just so happened that the bottom part of this map was the same regardless of which direction it came from. It was always that piece, but the other one obviously transitioned over. So that should now work for any map. So we can go back into the game. Go back to the island selection. We'll use this white one because there's more to it than this green one. It's more interesting. And we'll copy that. Although we'll add the other one. So I'll add a new row for our second island. We'll call that grass. Epoch is the same. I don't know whether it makes more sense to call it 9500 BC or actually just 1. So we'll just have it as 1 actually. I won't define the map in this one because I say we want to do the white one instead. So new row. Select the white one. Still the first epoch, just number 1. Biome is snow, and we'll add our 16 elements. So in this case, the first row is all empty, so that brings us down to number 4. 4 is empty as well. This one is the corner white one, so we need to have a quick look at what our spikes are for the snow. Move our islands over here. So start again. First row to 3 is empty, 4 is empty, 5 would be 19. 6 is 21. 7 is empty, 8 empty, 9 and 10. 10 is 23. 22. 30 for 12. Oops. And then 13, 14, 15 and 16 for the final one. Where have we gone wrong? First row is empty. Second row, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so that one should be 23, 22, and 30. That's none. That's none. Okay, and we can quickly jump into our minimap blueprint, change what our default value is for that, for the island, and well, almost got it. First row is actually wrong. Where did we go wrong? 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's have a look at it again. Oh, it's still running. Never mind. So we know yeah, that's the bottom corner, which is correct. The middle point is correct. That corner piece is correct. That one looks to be wrong. So this whole section here is in the wrong space. I guess it's really just that. Yeah, there we go. This particular island piece, or maybe all of them actually, just don't look quite as neat as this one, but maybe that's because I haven't got the appropriate texture group on or something. That's in the icons. Must have that texture group set because that wouldn't work otherwise. It's not the icons anyway. Small map. Yeah, texture group is correct, so I guess it just doesn't look as clean, but it's been the case for a few of the graphics. They've not quite been as clean and crisp as this one, but they're more or less there. Okay, so we've kind of proved that I can define now all of the all the islands within the appropriate data table. We can render the island correctly, and all we need to do next is get the selection of a particular sector to be represented in the main view. But I think we'll take that forward to another day, and we'll just have this as a shorter stream covering just that one thing. I say that the more we progress, the more kind of bits and pieces don't feel right, the graphics don't look right, can't really do much with that. Um, the implementation for how we're setting the textures on that perhaps isn't the most efficient way. So I'll do some investigation to see if there's any way to improve that. But if all else fails, it actually works. So there's no real reason why it has to be redone, and certainly doesn't have to be redone early on. So yeah, next time, back on Monday, Monday evening, approximately 9 o'clock, 9 o'clock UK time. And from that we'll work on trying to get the interaction with the mini map, get this selection mask and our what do we call this, the sector view, to keep in sync, to be correct, so we can select around our mini map and have this updated. That'll be the task for Monday. So thanks for watching, and see you again soon. Bye for now.